Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today on this not so very good day because we've lost a whole lot of our people, Texans. A lot of Texans have died unnecessarily, of course, because of the dereliction of duty of a incompetent political class that now permeates Texas, many other red states, and the country as a whole, with President Trump as the leader. This is the easiest way for one country to really go down. Welcome aboard, welcome aboard, welcome aboard. Patrick Magner, first one in the house, I believe, from Houston, Texas. My brother, Yvette Avery Herod, in the house from Atlanta, Georgia. We also have Paul Fleming from Powder Springs, Georgia. AVQ is in. He says, my monitor died. I'm on my backup laptop. Oh, sorry about that, brother. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. We also have in the house, he says, have to go sign into everything again. Be back in 5 minutes. Sorry to hear that, buddy. Let's see. Eric Hayes is in the house as well from Kingwood, Texas. Harry Denson from Missouri City, Texas is in the house. Let's see who else is scrolling in as I speak. Jay Ray, he says, good afternoon, Egberto and the posse. Good afternoon, folks. In the chat, remember I missed the first few in Substack, but we have Do You Lie? Of course, Do You Lie is complaining that we actually have an introduction to the program where I have to set up many channels over channels. I tell you what, Do You Lie? Are you a subscriber of Politics Done Right, paid subscriber of Politics Done Right? Let me tell you why I'm asking you that. Because your lonesome gets all of this out, and I make sure to get a whole lot of channels on. And sometimes some channels are slower to get up, and I have to go ahead and do that. And by the way, yes, we are also going to focus on the flood and other things. It's imperative. This flood is serious. And you don't cover it in one time. This is a serious issue. Adam W., welcome aboard. Phelps Mediation, welcome aboard. Judith D. Scott, welcome aboard. Bye. Do You Lie? Bye-bye. George Conk, welcome aboard. Norma Taylor, welcome aboard. All right. Let's get busy. I want to start with the flood. And I think we must start with the flood. And the reason is simple. By the time this is all over, right now I'm looking at the screen, it's about 90 people that are dead. We didn't have a hurricane. We had the remnants of a tropical storm that filled up that stayed and reigned over a valley for an extended period of time. And it's big news all over, right? And we are just wondering, how can so many people have died? That is because of the dereliction. Yeah, Jay, you can call in. That is a dereliction of duty of the political class. We've always said that Republicans don't know how to govern. They govern in rhetoric. But when it comes to put in put in things in place to actually do something. They don't. They cut budgets because they say, oh, that fire truck is staying there without doing anything, not realizing that when that fire truck is needed, the amount of money that will be saved is way exceeding the insurance you have by keeping that fire truck. Same with the FAA. Same with FEMA. They just don't get it. I mean, or if they get it, they just realize, you know what? We only care about those who can make money. But again, it's important for us to note that this should be a wake-up call for us. It should be a wake-up call for us. Let me go find that call coming in. Why isn't it showing up on my screen? J. Ray, I'm trying to figure out why it's not coming onto the screen here. That's interesting. It rang, but it did not ring on the system here. Try again, Ray. Let's see if it'll pick up. Try one more time, and then we'll continue. It looks like it's not connected. Let's see. Okay. All right, folks. So going back to the why isn't it working? Let me go ahead and restart our It's ringing on my phone, but it's not ringing into the computer system. Bear with me. Let me see what we can do here to why it isn't connecting through the computer system. I don't quite understand why. It should be lining up and communicating through the system. Let's see. Let me go ahead and see if this will work this way. There we go. That's what it was. All right, Mr. Brackens, come on in. I something wasn't connected.
Yeah. Sorry about the earlier mix-up. My phone kept wanting to dial another number for you, and it wasn't coming through where I wanted it to. But I'm here now.
Okay, great. Talk to me. Oh, so you are calling me on my direct line. I was wondering why it wasn't ringing.
That was unintentional.
Okay,
yeah, that was unintentional. It wasn't a spammer. So,
all right.
It is a very somber day. I'm sorry to hear about those people that got drowned out. It is bittersweet though. They did find 2 young girls clinging to a tree alive. So that was a bit of positivity.
Wait. When did they? Situation. Was that recently that they found 2 girls alive clinging to a tree?
I think so. Yeah, it was. It wasn't really big news as it should have been because of everything going on with Elon and his girlfriend. But I digress.
No, but that is actually important.
A lot I'm hearing.
I hope that should have been a big survey, because what that does is it gives people some urgency as they're because there's about 62 miles of flooding that they need to search. And a lot of times people think it's been 4 days, people are dead, and that you can have somebody survive that. That's a good thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard they were clinging to the tree because the water was still so high that they were at the top of the tree branch, and that's where they found them. I'm sure you can go find the details of it, but yeah, that's the story I heard. So again, like I say, bittersweet because they did find some of the people, but more bitter than sweet, if I could ever say so myself, because at the end of the day, look, Egberto, I know you're not a guy. I know you're not, but I'm going to say it like this. This was a rural community, mostly Caucasian people, and yet they are suffering just as bad. And I hope that people who support Trump take note of how he's handling this and take note of those programs, the NOAA. Take note of those like the NOAA and let people know this could have been prevented if we had enough people in place to get the word out in time. And because of his selfishness and gross incompetence, people are dying. And I don't know what's the bottom line now. Where's the floor to this hell that we're living in? Because look, I'm gonna bring it home with this. Over the weekend, I was kind of in a somber mood, so I decided to watch some movies. And a couple of movies I decided to watch was Jurassic Park and Independence Day. Why? Because both those movies have something in common. A concept that sounded good in theory, but was completely wrong. Well, Jurassic Park, they brought the raptors back, and the raptors learned how to open doors so they can hunt better. That was a bad idea, but they found that out later on. That was an FAFO moment. And then with Independence Day, that was a movie that actually gave me inspiration because, I remember growing up as a child when I actually believed that we had a government that would know how to handle a so-called extraterrestrial invasion. But now, if we had to deal with what Hollywood puts on our plate, as far as alien invasions and all these disasters and stuff like that, we're cooked. And that's what I'm saying. Hollywood, at this point, has a better idea of what a good government is supposed to look like than reality. And that's sad. Your thoughts?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I mean, the thing about it is good government is not that difficult. But what we have now is what we have right now is an implied, somebody just said it. I read it. It said, Hirut Kidain Marian says, Republican politicians are usually handpicked by corporations and oligarchs to lobby for them. Within that message is that answer. We are no longer governed by those who want to govern. We are governed by those who are there to make sure that a select few are taken care of. To hell with everything else. And there's something else that you said in your message. And, to some people, it may have come across racial, but I understood exactly what you mean. And I'm going to say it the way I think, in my opinion, I think it needed to be said. In that right now, Donald Trump has created false division between people, white, black, gay, all these different things. And at the top of the chain, he has his group of folks believing that somehow being white, it will inoculate you from all the ills that he's going to apply to society for the better good of the few. And I think one of the things that you want to say, and I think needs to be said, is my white brothers and my white sisters that are of the MAGA persuasion. Your hue, your color, your skin will not protect you against this entity. You are one of us, and we need to start acting that way. I think that's the implication of what you were saying.
Yeah, basically, Egberto, I appreciate you, driving that point home and really, giving it the context it needed.
Yeah, I think it's important because I think when we can team, when we can let folks, realize that, it's not me against you or anything like that. It's all of us against this oligarchy, and it's more. And look, it's against the oligarchy. It's against the plutocracy. It's against the wealthy. There are three distinct things. I know people like to merge them all together because they share something in common, but they are three distinct things. But anyhow, anything else before I continue? I got some videos to show.
Well, I think I want to say this. I think Michael Jackson said it best when he said, all I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
There you go. I love that song. They don't. I remember that song. That was a good one. Good beat, everything. Thank you, my brother. Have a great one. All right. So, folks, let me just say before I go to the video, because I'm going to change the subject. But here's the thing. This is a dry run. We see that we see what many of the cuts, and they're not going to come out and say this directly because, again, Donald Trump owns the media now. I wrote a piece over the weekend where I talked about media control by Donald Trump. You have that the Disney ABC went ahead and settled with Trump. The Paramount CBS settled with Trump. Amazon gave his wife $40 million. And the media over and over again is actually giving up and just going ahead and, and coalescing around Trump. So it's going to be us. It's going to be we, the independent media. It's going to be we being the media that's going to make these changes. Now, so that said, when you take a look at the floods that are occurring, this is just the beginning, folks. Let me explain. This is a minor thing in what could happen. We had water over the Guadalupe River. And by the way, I go tubing on the Guadalupe. Me and my family, we go tubing on the Guadalupe River. We go out there and we get into tubes and we have an ice chest and we go down that river for miles and have fun. It's a beautiful place. Yes, it has flash floods. I got involved in a flash flood there one time where, for all practical purposes, in the rapids, I almost lost my life. Okay? But it's a fun place. But the thing about it is, I remember back in the early days, you used to have La Patrulla going through, and for those of you who live in that area, it always used to be going through, and they were always ready to tell you, hey, the rain is coming, and you may have to be careful with that, the river being high. They would have all these physical people monitoring. But as we got into a austerity government Republican methodology, what started to happen is, I'll talk about Katrina Do You Lie in a minute, because that's I think you're making my point right there with Katrina. When I say this is a dry run. Now, you could see that in the early days, in the days when I was in college and used to go tubing there's a whole lot more controls from the authorities. As that slimmed up, budget costs cutting as we got Republican governorship away from this used to be a Democratic state. Things changed. Austerity came into play. And now you're on your own. On these rivers, you are on your own, right? And this is what it shows. When you are on your own with a long 200-mile long river, it's on you. Don't let them fool you. It's the cuts and the monitoring that causes. But why I say this is a dry run is the following. We are here in Houston, and there are a lot of other areas as well. We are on a ship channel. The ship channel is a entry into Houston, 50 miles into Houston. Houston about 50 miles or so from the coast, right? I mean, from the ocean. But there's a thing called a ship channel that brings all the major ships with oil and to the refineries and all of that into Houston. And every time a hurricane comes out here, it jiggles to one side or jiggles to the other side. Another thing, all the pipelines or many pipelines centralize into Houston, meaning we have pipelines that go from here to Jersey, from here to California, all over because we have so many refineries. I don't know how silly were they to compact all these refineries in one location. We have a president who is cutting weather analysis. We have a president who recently stopped the satellites that give private weather data that private companies could use. You haven't heard about it, right? But some of our weather satellites no longer provide the data to private companies. Didn't know about that, right? One of the reasons I think is they don't want the people to understand that climate change is a real thing. So some of this data now, the private companies are not getting. You can look it up. Rudnin, I found that particular answer, that particular article at Common Dreams. If you could find that for me, just so that folks can actually see what we're talking about. So we have all these things happening right now. Donald Trump has gone back to full fossil fuel, forgetting about anything with green energy. So we're falling behind in development of green energy technology as China is taking off. So we are receding while China is moving forward. The first thing has to occur is a hurricane gets into the Gulf, and this time not jiggle. This time go straight up the ship channel. That is not only going to be a catastrophic event for the ship channel, it's going to be a catastrophic event for Houston, both for pollution as well as the destruction of a lot of refineries, the energy that emanates from it. And it won't only affect the Houston economy because, like I mentioned, these pipelines go throughout the country. So whereas Houston provides a whole lot of the refining capabilities and the shipping of petroleum capabilities, suddenly you lose a large percentage of your capacity right there, and it affects the entire country, not for days, not for months, but for years. Okay? For years. And here's the deal. When this occurs, let's see, New Orleans Refinery Company, Norco, all this happened. Come on, man. Yeah. Look, remember, the hurricane that hit New Orleans wasn't a big hurricane. New Orleans didn't go under because it got hit by a big hurricane. New Orleans went under because the levees failed. There are two different scenarios here. New Orleans was a huge man-made event because of a failed levees. I'm talking about a Cat 4 going up the ship channel. That would mean disaster and over 2,000 people died, if I recall correctly, in New Orleans. But if we have that direct hit up the ship channel in Houston, the amount of people that died in New Orleans would be chump change compared to what would happen in Houston, a much more populated city, a much more dangerous city than we have in New Orleans. And, I've been talking to a few people and I'm like, I sure hope this isn't the year, but with what's happening with the temperature of the Gulf, etc., I am concerned that is what we're looking at. And an event in Houston is not an event localized to Houston. It's an event localized to the entire country. It is shameful. So I hope we take that into account. All right, let's see. Patrick says the official number of deaths in ICE custody is 12 under Trump. The issue is there is no paperwork for the detainees. I hear you, buddy. I hear you. That is sad. What else have we got here? All right, let me go to the first video, and this is now about the bill, the big ugly bill. Too often, establishment Democrats go on to these news programs and try to tag the middle, or they try to sort of become Republican light as they're explaining their points, etc. I'll tell you, Andy Beshear is a pretty middle of the road kind of guy. He's a Republican governor, or rather Democratic governor of Kentucky, a very red state that both he and his father been governors of. So they sort of they're institutionalized, if you will, there. But I tell you, I was very impressed with how knowledgeable he was about the evils, about the big, beautiful bill. And not only that, I was very impressed with how he called out Republicans for the evil that they represent. And again, I don't see that often from establishment Democrats at all. I see that from the ones that the establishment would normally call the radicals or the left. But Andy Beshear, with the way he explained Medicare or the Medicaid cuts, and the way he talked about SNAP, and the way he called out Republican governors, I tell you what, it impressed me. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side.
Governor, I do want to turn to the giant bill President Trump signed into law, what it would mean for Kentucky. 1 in 4 Kentuckians are on Medicaid, 1 in 10 on food stamps. How many will lose their benefits because of this law? And what, as governor, can you do to help?
Well, this law is devastating. It's the single worst piece of legislation I've seen in my lifetime, and it is a congressional Republican and presidential attack on rural America. In my state alone, 200,000 people are going to lose their coverage. Those are 200,000 Kentuckians that deserve to see a doctor when they're sick. 20,000 healthcare workers are going to lose their jobs, and we've got up to 35 rural hospitals that are typically the second biggest employer in their communities that may close their doors. And what that means is our economy takes a huge hit. And then whether you have private insurance or Medicaid, if you live in rural America, you have to drive hours just to see the doctor that used to be in your community. It is awful. And that is before we even talk about the cuts to SNAP, which means that seniors and children will go hungry at night and wake up hungry in the morning. I cannot believe that Congress was willing to pass this. I mean, it's awful.
They did add about $50 billion for rural hospitals. You don't think that's going to help?
No. Based on the massive cuts that are here, based on the fact that a rural hospital may have 40% or 50% of their revenue coming from Medicaid, this will not help to keep those doors open. And so what you're going to first see are rural hospitals cutting specialties. You may have to drive several hours just to give birth in many parts of this country. And just think about how the economic hit to these communities go. You lose 200 jobs from doctors and nurses and orderlies, and all of a sudden the coffee shop does worse. The bank doesn't have as many folks coming in. I mean, this is going to hit rural America right in the face.
Governor, this law adds work requirements for Medicaid on those who are able-bodied adults. Kentucky Republican Congressman Hal Rogers says adding these requirements, quote, protects the longevity of Medicaid benefits for our most vulnerable population and adds integrity and strength to Medicaid and SNAP assistance. One of the first acts of as governor, yours, was to end Medicaid work requirements in Kentucky. Why shouldn't people who can work?
Well, we want everybody that can work to work. And right now in Kentucky, we have the most people working, the most jobs filled, and the largest workforce in our history. And that is with our current Medicaid structure. That's because these work requirements really aren't about getting people back to work. They are about increasing the paperwork on everybody. That's the senior, because 70% of our long-term care costs are covered by Medicaid. And that's children as well, with half of Kentucky's kids covered by Medicaid. These work requirements aren't just for specific people. Everybody else has to check all the boxes saying they're not able-bodied. And what happens is when somebody misses that one box, they are kicked off for 6 months or more.
Governor.
Meaning families have to take that parent or grandparent in. It means they have to cover all those other costs. All this is more red tape meant to kick people who should get Medicaid off of Medicaid.
Governor, I just asked that very question to the Treasury Secretary about the increase in red tape, and his response is Democrats think poor people are stupid.
It's amazing. Listen, I know a lot of people on Medicaid. These are our parents with special needs children that could have never covered it otherwise. These are busy people all working 2 jobs already to support that child. And now if they miss a deadline, if they miss checking a box, look at what happens. I mean, you can lie all you want about what's in this bill, but the numbers are the numbers. The predictions by the Congressional Budget Office are there. It's going to devastate rural health care, all while adding trillions of dollars to our national debt. And it's going to upend every state budget across the country. You know what's sad is that while Democratic governors are speaking out, we're not speaking out because we're Democrats. We're speaking out because we're supposed to be the best governors of our states that we can be. All these Republican governors that aren't saying a thing, where their rural hospitals are going to close, where they're going to see massive layoffs and people lose their coverage, that's pretty sad. You know, our jobs is to stand up for and represent our people, and I wish people would get back to that.
Andy Beshear nails it. And to the Republican governors that are listening to him, he's going to be the governor of he's going to be the leader of the governor of governors, if you will. I suggest you listen to him. You won't, But I think all that does is open the door for many of you to be replaced by good Democrats, and more than likely, good progressive Democrats. Oh, yeah. Hey, Michael Rudnin, I'm going to read that stuff on the layoffs in a little bit, but I need to get to this other story here. What economists, I have a love-hate relationship with Larry Summers. He nailed it at this one. I want you guys to listen to this. Economist Larry Summers did not mince his words. Remember, Larry Summers is that guy that wasn't too keen on President Biden's great progressive policies that he put out there, which no other president in decades had ever done, since, to put it bluntly, FDR. And he came out completely slamming the bill. He made sure to point out the bill is inflationary. It's going to zoom up the debt. It's going to get tens of thousands, over 100,000 American killed. It's the largest cut in the safety net, and it is simply irresponsible to transfer the wealth to wealthy people. I had not seen Larry Summers excoriate a bill like he is doing and has done in the last few days on this big, beautiful bill. So I want you to listen to him, then we'll take it on the other side.
Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, also the former president of Harvard University. Larry, thank you for joining us this morning. In the New York Times this week, you and Robert Rubin, who also served as Treasury Secretary, called this bill dangerous, said it poses huge risks to the economy. What are those risks?
George, just to start with, what your people have been describing is the biggest cut in the American safety net in history. The Yale Budget Lab estimates that it will kill over 10 years 100,000 people. That is 2,000 days of death like we've seen in Texas this weekend. In my 70 years, I've never been as embarrassed for my country on July 4th. These higher interest rates, these cutbacks in subsidies to electricity, these reductions in the availability of housing, the fact that hospitals are going to have to take care of these people and pass on the costs to everybody else. And that's going to mean more inflation, more risk that the Fed has to raise interest rates and run the risk of recession, more stagflation. That's the risk facing every middle-class family in our country because of this bill. And for what? $1 million over 10 years to the top 0.1% of our population. Is that the highest priority use of federal money right now? I don't think so. This is a shameful act by our Congress and by our president that is going to set our country back.
Part of the president's argument is that economic growth sparked by the bill will alleviate the dangers that you talk about here. The chair of the Council of Economic Advisors is up next, and his council issued a report this week projecting $11 trillion in deficit reduction from growth, higher tax revenue, and savings on debt payments. How do you respond to that?
It is respectfully nonsense. None of us can forecast what's going to happen to economic growth. What we can forecast is that when people have to hold government debt, instead of being able to invest it in new capital goods, new machinery, new buildings, that makes the economy less productive. What we can forecast is that when we're investing less in research and development, investing less in our schools, that there is a negative impact on economic growth. There is no economist anywhere without a strong political agenda who is saying that this bill is a positive for the economy. And the overwhelming view is that it is probably going to make the economy worse. Think about it this way. How long can the world's greatest debtor remain the world's greatest power? And this is piling more debt onto the economy than any piece of tax legislation in dollar terms that we have ever had.
Summers didn't mince his words, and he shouldn't. But I tell you what, folks, in as much as, yes, the bill is signed, the bill is now law. We have the time to educate folks throughout this country. We have the time to put the fear of losing in every politician who has voted for this bill. And we need to ensure that they all pay the price. It is imperative that they not only pay the price, but hurt from paying the price so that no other politician wants to damage the American people damage the American people to the way that they are going to do. Nobody has an incentive to do so anymore because they understand that they will pay the price politically and otherwise going forward. What these guys are doing is, while again, they're the ones who make the laws, it is literally or figuratively criminal. That they are going to affect and cause the death of many Americans, that they are going to take and steal your wealth legally, create the laws to allow the plutocracy to legally take your money, what you've worked for, and put it in the hands of lazy, ill-doing billionaires and others. Folks, this is our country, and we must reclaim it, and we must prevent the few from taking advantage of the many. Bridge MCP, how you doing, beautiful? Great to see you here. If you're still here, type something in the chat so that I know you're still here. Are you talking about the protest that's occurring in Mexico about gentrification? I think a lot of you. I think a lot of you know that. Let's see. LBW says, yes, everyone needs to know the timeline established for these cuts because they were structured to happen after the midterm in 26. Yeah, but guess what? That is true. But some hospitals are preempting and using that as an excuse to close immediately. And like Michael Ruddin just said, wait, there are going to be 12 hospitals closing pretty soon. We'll see if that comes to pass. But anyhow, Bridge, great to see you here, girl. Right now, there are protests in Mexico against Americans. Can you believe that? Think about that. We have protests in Mexico about Americans coming and coming to certain areas and making their costs higher. And now they are starting to deport folks that don't have their papers put together. I guess what's good for the goose is good for the gander, eh? Let's see what happens now. All right, and BBB cuts 20% more from the National Weather Service, NOAA, next year too. Yeah, we are in dire straits. The Economist currently shedding 1,000 jobs a day. The first 5 months of 2025 saw a 3% loss of the same period over 2024. That only happens in a recession. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Let's see what else we've got before I go to the other video. The other video, let's see, do I have time for I think I have time for the other video. Let's go ahead and play the other video and then we'll continue. Watching that interview with State of the Union host CNN Dana Bash and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was horrendously difficult for me. Specifically, how she allowed him to slide with so much. So what I intend to do here is take these pieces of the interview and point out what should have been said. So first of all, check out this segment of the interview.
Let's start with the new law and who it helps. The Tax Policy Center says the majority of the tax benefits will go to Americans making $217,000 or more a year. The Yale Budget Lab says the richest Americans will see their income rise by nearly 2%. The lowest earning Americans will see their income drop by 3% when factoring in cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. You argue that the benefits will really be aimed at the middle class. How does that square? Well,
Dana, first, let's have a look at the Yale Budget Lab, because I was looking at their findings, and this week I actually went on their website. They're all ex-Biden officials, so I think we can discount everything they say. I'd encourage all your viewers to look at the composition of both the board and the staff. And it's just not right that what we have here is a middle class and working class bill that we we are going to see wages accelerate, and we are going to see, just as we saw with President Trump's first tax bill, we are making permanent these tax cuts. And what happened in 2017, 2018 was the highest wage earners went from paying 37% of all taxes to 45%. So that's going to be permanent now. So permanently, the highest 10% will pay a higher percent of the taxes.
I should say that, taking the Yale Budget Lab aside, there are Republican senators who are worried about affordability and who this all is going to affect.
Dana Bash failed to say that it doesn't matter who comes up with the data. Math is math, and math is absolute. She should not have allowed him to get away with saying, well, guess what? That organization has a whole lot of Biden officials on the board. Anybody who knows about these organizations know, first of all, a lot of folks on the board are not the ones crunching the numbers, but the ones crunching the numbers are mathematicians who have no desire or interest in politics, but just what the numbers said. He also claimed that the Trump administration during 2017 and 2018, that somehow that tax cut was responsible for creating better economic activity. The fact is, the Trump administration claimed the tax cuts were responsible for a significant turnaround in the economy, but fact-checking organizations like PolitiFact found that economic improvements were largely a continuation of the trends from the Obama era. Bissett also lied via misinformation. He says the wealthiest proportion of the tax increased under Donald Trump. Well, yeah. But guess what? What happened is, as we continue to get these income transfers to the wealthy, they are the ones making more interest. They are the ones who are having more capital gains. Of course, they are going to be the one paying more taxes because they have all the money. The rest of folks are starved from having money. They are at subsistence levels. And she didn't point that out. She allowed him to use misinformation and play with numbers to fake out the American people. The fact of the matter is, they are transferring your money, and those who have the money are the ones who are paying the most taxes. And now they don't even want to pay that, in as much as they have all of our money.
One of the tax cuts that are in here are for, and the president talks about them a lot, are on tips and overtime. Those are temporary. Why not make those permanent? They're only 2025 to 2028.
This is a big part of President Trump's agenda. So, we have what I call parallel prosperity here, that Wall Street has done great. Now it's time for working Americans to do great. And this is President Trump's agenda. So we've got it in for the duration of his term. And we will see if the next administration wants to do that.
Now, there's another thing. Why didn't Dana Bash point out that you cannot claim you are for the working class when you say, he said the following. He said, we are working for the middle class and the working class. We made the tax cuts for the wealthy were made permanent. Why then are you leaving it up to another administration to support the working class? You are mixing your words there. You're actually lying. If it's permanent for the wealthy and you made them permanent for the wealthy, doesn't that say that you care more about the wealthy than you care about the working class? If the working class, you didn't see it fit to make it permanent for them, the tax cuts permanent for tips and overtime, but you felt it necessary to make it permanent for the wealthy. And she didn't touch asking or continuing with that level of thought.
Talking about the affordability, how is making cuts on Medicaid programs?
Well,
how does that, and how it affects the people who are at the lowest ranking when it comes to income, how does that help with the affordability crisis in America?
Well, first of all, the affordability and saving Medicaid, let's separate those. And only in DC is a 20% hike over 10 years, a cut. So Medicaid funding will go up 20% over the next 10 years. The people who Medicaid Medicaid were designed for, the pregnant women, the disabled, and families with children under 14, will be refocused.
Now, Mr. Bessent comes out and he says, well, only in Washington does a 20% rise is a cut. Well, let's do some math. If inflation is 2% a year, and we know it's higher, but let's say it's 2% a year, then that means over 10 years, that inflation eaten on that money would be more than 20% because it's cumulative, right? So if you have 2% inflation every year, a 20% increase in Medicaid is a cut because you are increasing it at a lower rate than the prices are rising. And Dana didn't hit him back on that. And that is very important because guess what? The inflation rate is likely going to be higher, more on the order of between 3 to 5%, maybe 6%. And if the tariffs are entered into the equation, all of that is going to make inflation much larger. So that 20% increase is likely a large cut over 10 years. And she did not query him about that. Folks, that is why we need to have truthful information out there.
The president promised that there would not be changes to Medicaid benefits, and putting a work requirement is, by definition, a change to benefits.
No, there are no change in benefits. There's a change in requirements to get the benefits. And what we are doing, we are bringing back manufacturing jobs. We are bringing back working class jobs. By securing the border, we have already seen working class wages move up. So we are creating jobs. People can get off Medicaid and get a job that has good health care benefits. Dana.
In theory, that works, but I'm sure you've seen and heard a lot of the concern, including and especially from Republicans who are the most vocal in Congress, about the fact that those work requirements are going to be very cumbersome to actually prove, and it will inevitably force the people who need that Medicaid coverage off the rolls?
Well, first of all, the Republicans are not the most vocal on this. It is a group of Democrats who unfortunately seem to think that poor people are stupid. I don't think poor people are stupid. I think they have agency. And I think to have them register twice a year for these benefits, that is not a burden. But these people who want to infantilize the poor and those who need these Medicaid benefits are alarmist.
Yeah. But my impression of the Republican Party is that historically you've wanted to cut through the red tape and not create more red tape.
Now, state programs, they claim that work requirements is not a change in the president's promise. Let's first point out something. If you change the requirements to get Medicaid, then you are changing Medicaid. In other words, if I needed to make $20,000 less to qualify for Medicaid, and now it is $30,000 less to qualify for Medicaid, that's a change in Medicaid. It doesn't matter whether it is the services being changed or the requirements to get those services that's being changed. That's a change in Medicaid. Now, there are a few states, Georgia one specifically, that have tried work requirements. It doesn't increase work at all because most of the people on Medicaid that are not working either physically cannot work or they're taking care of somebody else that's on Medicaid. Look, the fallacy that you have someone in the basement playing video games is just that, a fallacy. Most Americans want to work. Go out on the streets in any city in this country. Go out on the farms and the hardware stores in any rural area. You see people wanting to work. If you pay them a living wage, they want to work. So this fallacy is simply there to cut people and frustrate people from taking out Medicaid and thus a saving on Medicaid. But let me tell you the more sinister thing that this bill does. And I want you guys, especially some of our older listeners, to listen to this because you may have parents that are in nursing homes, etc. You had I think it was between $500,000 and $750,000 that you could keep your home, in other words, not lose your home, and still be on Medicaid in a nursing home. That's how it used to be. Now with what they've done with this bill is lower that amount. So while the prices of homes are going up, they're lowering the cap that they have on houses to qualify for Medicaid. So here's the deal. Let's say your house is worth $500,000. You did qualify for Medicaid because it's not more than $500,000. As you're sitting down in your nursing home, every year you have to requalify for Medicaid. And let's say your home appreciated now from $500,000 to $550,000. Guess what? You are no longer qualified for Medicaid. And these are the techniques that they're using to kick people off of Medicaid without being able to say directly we are cutting Medicaid. They're changing the requirements, and in changing the requirements, what they're doing is cutting Medicaid. Do not be fooled. And the funny thing about it, the appreciation of your home actually generally tallies with inflation as well. So this bill is a disaster. It will hurt people. It'll close hospitals, and closing hospitals isn't just the beginning. All those people that work for hospitals that used to go to the restaurants, that used to go to the spas, that used to go to the gyms, and in rural areas there may be just one gym, there may be one spa, there may be one. Businesses will fall for that one coffee shop. All these folks are going to suffer when the couple of hundred people that work at hospital in rural area number one, or the 500 people that work in the rural area number two. It's going to be a cascading effect, not only on your health, not only not having a hospital to take care of your emergencies, but it's going to be a cascading effect. The other evil thing these folks done is they make sure that the worst of it occurs right after the midterms. Don't be fooled. We are going to be keeping you informed. We will make sure that you know what's coming. But this is an evil bill, and anybody who calls themselves MAGA, your Führer has betrayed you. Your Führer has definitely betrayed you, and that is something that we have to understand, folks. Look, we are going to be talking about this throughout the cycle, throughout the new election cycle that's coming. We're going to be out there making people know, because, like I said, given that a lot of the bill doesn't come into pass until 2026 after the election, what we have to do is we have to make people see what's occurring. And E2247 is right. Hospitals are already closing, but I shout about it. Forgive me. You should shout about it. Let me tell you. This is how I want Democrats to fight. I want Democrats to go out there every time a hospital closes. I want them to go out there and I want them to hold out the big, beautiful bill and point out the items within the bill that's causing these hospitals to close. That is what you have to do. Donald Trump learned one thing. Many people have learned in America that they only listen to that which is performative. Democrats have a tendency to be to the fact. We call out the facts and then we expect you to be okay. But we may have to add a little bit of performance to it. Go out there with charts, not ugly charts. Go out there when the hospital is closing. When you have videos of people being kicked out of hospitals, let it be seen. If your parent is being told that they cannot stay in the nursing home anymore, have a hidden camera, have your phone in video mode on, and have that conversation. In fact, anytime you're going into the nursing home to talk about anything with regards to your parent, have your phone recording. If you or have a GoPro or something. Get all of this stuff on videos. Let America see what is really happening. And by the way, folks, if you have videos of anything occurring with regards to the bill, with regards to what the GOP is doing, send it to me with permission to print, with permission to show. And we will get it out there through all the other networks that we're associated with. Because this is not going to happen. What I just did with Dana Bash's interview, was important, right? Because I pointed out the things that she should have pointed out during that interview. All the things that I pointed out. She has a staff. She has producers. She has writers. And nobody came up with the answers, or nobody told her in her ears what to ask this guy. As I'm watching it, I'm like, please, Dana, ask the right questions, Dana. Follow up, Dana. Please follow up, Dana. Yes, I will keep informing you, my brother Denson. That's all I'm saying in my head. Please follow up. So that's the reason I bring these cuts to us all of the times, to add more context to, because remember, a large amount of people are seeing that interview and they take that at face value. Now, when we reinterpret that interview and you get it, you can be the instructors of others. You can also share these videos. I also put them on TikTok, Instagram, and everywhere else, right? And that is what's important. We are going to be the ones who lift ourselves up. We are going to be that ones. We're not going to expect ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, or any of them. We are going to be the ones speaking to our brother's keeper. We are the ones. So anyway, we are at the end of the program. I want to remind everybody to please support the program the best you can. The way to support our program is to become paid subscribers of our newsletter, Egberto Off the Record. Remember that we don't only do the newsletter. We are all over putting the data out, informing both on air and off air. So I'm asking you to go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Please become a paid subscriber. I guarantee you that, and by the way, becoming a paid subscriber give you access to all of my books, both the current books and subsequent books that I write. I'm currently writing 3 other books. I'm asking to please support the program. And again, you are ensuring that we can get the message out. You ensure that we are getting the message out. I need help with my videos. It's taxing. It's right now a tough operation. Your support means the world. So again, please consider becoming a paid subscriber at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. You'll be a subscriber of Egberto Off the Record on Substack, and you have access to all my books, etc., etc., etc. I got to get out of here. I think I'm going to go off to the gym for about an hour and a half. I got to get some exercise in. You know, we got to stay healthy. And we'll talk tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Central on the air, and of course on the network as well, and then 3 again tomorrow. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. You guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.